PeluffOnnema Christmas, coming in one of my favorites, A Christmas Carol.
Ooh.
Many fantastic versions. I would highly recommend Scrooge with Bill Murray and Christmas Carol with George C. Scott. So scary.
Very scary.
Very excited for the Tom Hardy version coming out. Wow, he's hot. And it's going to be super scary. It's that guy who looks like Brad Pitt but doesn't so much anymore. Anyway, this is the plot line of all of them. Starts out, guy named Scrooge. They set up, he is tight with his money. He doesn't want to help poor people. He doesn't care if people go to prison. He's like, are there workhouses?
Yes.
He's a guy that works for him named Bob Cratchit. Bob Cratchit has a son named Tiny Tim who has an illness. But even through this illness, he says, God blesses everyone. He loves everybody. So, first night, Christmas Eve, Scrooge goes home to his very empty house, and we hear scary ghosts, and that is the ghost of Jacob Marley, his business partner, or his business started out as manager, and then, oh my God, Jacob Marley. And then Jacob has all these chains on him, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I've come here to warn you, because if you don't start fixing your life, you're going to end up like me. And he goes, what do you mean you had a great life? You were rich. And he goes, mankind should have been my business. And Scrooge is like, this is not a good time for me for ghosts. But then he falls asleep, bam, wakes up, or he thinks he wakes up, and there is the first ghost of Christmas past, which is technically the second ghost, and he's very jovial. And he shows Scrooge when he was younger. At first he was like lonely at Christmas, so you're like, oh, that's where it started. But then he gets an internship with like the Marley guy, and then he meets this lady, and they were clearly like very smitten, and he starts to be mad, and he's like, oh yeah, but then we swap into the Ghost of Christmas Present. And the Ghost of Christmas Present takes him to Bob Cratchit's house, where Tiny Tim is like so happy and excited, but they're so hungry and living in such a small place because Scrooge is not giving him any raises whatsoever. And then he goes over to his brother's house, or his sister who's passed away, his son, and they're all making fun of him, but then his nephew sticks up for him anyway because he really has Christmas in his heart, and he's going to keep inviting Scrooge over. So Scrooge is like, maybe I should change. And then all of a sudden the tone really changes, and the scariest ghost ever comes up. And he has little starving children under his cloak, and it's terrifying. And he takes him over to Bob Cratchit's house, and there's an empty seat. I have an empty seat. I see an empty seat at this table because you didn't help him out. And then they're at a grave site, and he's like, whose grave is that? And all of a sudden it's his grave, and he's dying alone, and nobody cares. And he's like, give me a second chance. I want a second chance. I want a second chance. And he wakes up, and he runs to the window, and he looks out, and there just happens to be a man walking by. It's a boy, actually. He says, what day is it? And he says, it's Christmas Day. And he says, oh my God, the ghost did it. I didn't miss anything. I still have a chance. And he throws him some money, and he says, bring the Christmas goose to the Cratchits, but don't tell him it was me. And then they get this big, huge goose, and Tiny Tim is like, oh my God, God bless us, everyone. No, that's a different movie. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, which is kind of similar. And then he goes over to his nephew's house, and he knows the answer to the game because he was there with the ghost, and they were like, how did you know that? But then he keeps Christmases in the heart, he gives money to poor people, and he gives Bob Cratchit a raise, and he helps with Tiny Tim, and he just has Christmas in his heart all year long. And it's just the most amazing story ever about being kind to other people. Merry Christmas.